This show contains language that is unsuitable for children.
Grant us love filled with good intention. May we find peace in the midst of dissension. We not what they make us, though they try to break us. And see you love us, giving love. This is how we make it.
Hey now, and welcome from North Dallas, Texas. This is my second remix of my podcast, Giving Myself Permission, where we are releasing one divine purpose at a time. And I am your host, Dr. Penny Murray. This episode is brought to you by the Learning Spa Cultural Inner Wellness Retreat. It is my vision for a revolutionary space where African Americans' inner wellness is prioritized, celebrated, and empowered. We're still in the early stages of raising funds and putting together the building plans and things like that. But the Learning Spa will be a physical manifestation of our mission here on this podcast to prioritize African American inner wellness without the stigmas. And you can help me turn this vision into a reality by visiting my website, pennymurray.com. That's PENNIEMURRAY. You can visit my website and learn more about our building efforts and join us in making the inner wellness a proactive commitment, not a reactive liability in the African American community. Before I really get into everything, I want to start with a new section that I had stopped for a moment to do a prayer for people who had lost their lives in the many plane crashes that we were having last month. It just felt good to center, to start off with something that was sacred, to set our intentions of purpose. I dabble in divination tools, and one of those tools is oracle cards. So I wanted to use that as a tool to see what the universe is saying to us collectively. Divine Oneness led me to a card called Beautiful Uncaging. And on this card, it's gorgeous. I'll explain the graphics in a minute. There is the number 14. In numerology, 14, you're supposed to reduce the numbers to a single digit. And 1 plus 4 is 5. And so 5 represents liberation, transformation, and the desire to pursue our deepest desires, which is so on point for what I'm wanting this podcast to do. Liberation, transformation, and the desire to pursue our deepest wounds. So our deepest desires and looking at our deepest wounds. So this was so awesome. And it's called Beautiful Uncaging. Now, let me read the key concepts. Prisons of guilt, a need for self-inventory, rigorous honesty, accountability, and making amends. Now, whenever I'm talking about anything, it's about us first, the individual, going and turning our focus inward instead of looking outward and pointing our finger at everybody else. This is about turning inward. What it reads, it says, at this time, you are being called to assess where guilt is playing a part in your life. Recognize how it's affecting you and others and address it so that you can release yourself from its grip. Guilt is a powerful emotional state capable of transforming difficult situations. It can keep you accountable for your actions when you've done something that causes harm. Now, remember, we're talking about causing harm inwardly to ourselves. However, it can also feed a self-sabotaging cycle that fosters codependency and a distorted sense of personal power. Self-blame can lead to behaviors that perpetuate low self-esteem. The graphic on this card is just absolutely beautiful. It is a heart that is made of bars in a heart shape. But in the center of this heart is a shadow of a person. And in the center of that person, right at the heart space, is a keyhole. And there is a key inside of that keyhole. And that says to me, this beautiful uncaging is from us. It's not from someone else. We have to turn that key ourselves because it's deep within our heart. And what is so amazing in this card too on the graphics is shooting of golden light and stars and the beautiful uncaging of it all. So I want you to just kind of take a moment and just consider when you have harmed yourself, not others right now, yourself. This knowledge will free you from the stories you tell about who you are and your ability to connect truthfully with remorse, not condemnation, so that you can turn the key and experience the beautiful uncaging of who you are. Now, you might be taking on the burden of guilt that's not even yours to carry. So I want you to just pay attention in this moment of sacred intention. Just experience what it would feel like to be uncaged, to release yourself from the prison of your own making. That really felt so good, just to center ourselves. And I feel we need to start practicing being on purpose. We're definitely in a time when we need to get in where we fit in. And what I mean by that is that we got to get on our spot. Where and how does our purpose fit into what we are facing today? When I took a small business course years ago, the instructor would always say, find a need and feel it. That's what I mean by you got to get in where we fit in. There is a time that the universe is going to be calling on you because it's your time to get on your spot. This whole podcast really is dedicated to my fellow wounded warriors. But what I mean when I talk about wounded warriors are those of us who accepted a calling in spirit form. This is the world according to Penny. And I don't think I'm alone. And this is just me. When we were in spirit form, we made a spiritual agreement to come here in physical form to enrich, heal, expand, and inspire the world, or in our own way, challenge the status quo of power. Now, I believe that. And that's why I always say we are here on purpose for purpose. We're not just here to suck up air and take up space. We are here for purpose. Because we accepted that calling, we went out there and we started yes, I'm going to be a warrior. And then we got our ass handed to us by life. And what I mean by that, because I'm telling you, I have had my ass handed to me several times through pain and disappointment and betrayal. And some of it was right from my family. People that you love the most, that's getting your ass handed to you by life. The pain of it all, the wounds, we take a back seat. We go to the sideline and we say, you know what? I'm good. I'm good. But, I can only just say that's where I have been. And in this time, I realized that I can't sit on the sideline anymore. I love quotes. And in 2004, while I was studying human motivation, when I was getting my master's degree, I came across a quote from Plato, and it was in The Republic. That was the name of the book that we were required to read. Plato was somewhat of a politician, from my understanding, and he was basically reprimanding or going off on other colleagues. And so it got to this part where it was called Plato's allegory of the cave. It just resonated with me so deeply that it became my life's mission statement. But there was a caveat to that I didn't read at the time. I just kind of skipped over it. But here's what the statement said. Plato wrote, I must go beyond the dark world of sensory information to the clear brilliance of the sunlight of the outside world. Once done, it becomes my duty to go back to the cave in order to illuminate the minds of those imprisoned in the darkness of sensory knowledge. Now, let me just break this down. This is the world according to Penny. The sunlight of the outside world was saying, you're coming out of darkness into a sense of higher consciousness, sunlight of the outside world, the world that was beyond what we have been conditioned and indoctrinated with. And so coming out in that sunlight was a higher consciousness, to maybe coming out of the matrix, you can put it like that, into higher consciousness, into a global perspective of life itself. And then it goes on and says, once I've done that, I have to go back. My duty is to go back into the cave to illuminate the minds that are still imprisoned in this darkness of sensory information or sensory knowledge. And sensory knowledge to me was saying that is the indoctrination, the conditioning that we got from our families and the society in which we live in. Now, as I said, there was a caveat that I did not read. While I was excited about this, and I was like, yes, that's what I feel that Spirit is calling me to. That is my act of resistance. Now, mind you, this was, like I said, way back in 2004. But Spirit actually gave me my calling in 2001, and I was kicking the can around and doing shit that, resisting my spiritual agreement. That's all I'm going to say right now. But as I said, that there was a caveat to this particular quote. And for whatever reason, I went back and read it. And it said that when you go back into the cave, your job was going back in to free people. But the very people that you are going to free are going to betray you. They're going to throw rocks at you. They're going to stab you in the back. They're going to do all kind of shit, and that's the getting your ass handed to you by life. Because we made a spiritual agreement to do this thing. We were brought into the sunlight of higher consciousness. And it was not to go back in and condemn anybody, but to free them and to share with them what we have been experiencing. But in doing that, we got betrayed. We got rejected. So, of course, we then say, I'm done. I'm just going to go over here and sit down. And then, of course, we become late bloomers, at least in our minds. I felt like a late bloomer for a long time. But then one time I was in meditation and my divine allies shared with me that the universe is not annual. It is a perennial universe. It is forever blooming. Timing is everything for the universe. And when it's our time to get in our spot where we fit like a puzzle, perfectly shaped for that spot, we have to be ready. I know that out there in the flow of everyday life are thought leaders, creatives, and innovators. We've taken the back seat. We've been hurt. We want to sit out here on the sideline. And the 92%ers, I see that graphic going around where all the black women are sisters. We sitting on the high-rise building, sipping our cognac or whatever, watching the shit burn around us. But we have to realize eventually we can't just keep sitting on the sideline as 92%ers. Yes, in a sense, they broke this shit and they're gonna have to deal with it. But if we sit too long sipping cognac and watching shit blaze, we will not be in our space and we will then practice self-betrayal. So sitting on the sideline or for hours, zoning out, playing video games, overdosing on social media, we're gonna have to let that go. Because our assignment for the next few years is to turn our focus inward, to heal our wounds that this society has never gave a damn about, so that we can get off the sideline and get on our spot when the universe calls us into that space. That's our assignment right now. But before I get into today's discussion, I gotta do my 2 cents. I love seeing this segment as invoking the energy of the ancestors and honoring Black History 365. It's also, as I begin to think about this even more, it is to understand and talk about the intersectionality between African Americans, our ancestors, and us, and white fragility, because that's what we are dealing with right now. So today, I want to feature not just an ancestor, but in honor of Black Women's History Month. Listen, I know Black Women's History Month is officially in April, but as far as I'm concerned, Black Women's History Month is going to be for the next few years. But this is what Spirit has been sharing with me. I've been getting some cool downloads. As the universe is perennial, the universe is also balanced. And what has been happening is that the masculine energy has dominated for centuries, and it has caused a global imbalancing, and spirit needs to get us back to balance. It may appear, men, that it's all about women, Black women, but it's really about balance because it's been imbalanced for so long. And so while you might not like it, it might feel uncomfortable, it is simply to bring about balance. So just kind of chill out because we are being leveled up for balance. Now, I want to talk about enslaved women's resistance. Women that were enslaved, they had a measure of resistance as well that often didn't look like what the men were doing. And so from the early 1800s through the antebellum era to emancipation in the 1860s and even the aftermath, the vast majority of enslaved people worked long, tedious, backbreaking days of work that were often filled with not just the work they had to do, they also worked under the threat of violence constantly. And sometimes that violence wasn't just about the whip. It was about taking of a life or to rape. So the threat of violence was always there in so many different forms. But in this violence and in this backbreaking work, our ancestors regularly attempted to resist their enslavement. Now, while men were the primary organizers and participants in the more aggressive acts of rebellion, was often not told is how enslaved women had their own and very effective acts of resistance against their slaveholders. Their labor as women was vital to the immense economic success of their slaveholders. The culture they helped to create was crucial to the social development within the United States. Now, although their acts of resistance are often more difficult to trace than enslaved men, the women and the history of their contributions give us a more complete picture of Americans' identity. And their contribution, it is worthy of recognition. Our enslaved ancestors, especially the women, they knew the repercussions for Black people showing any kind of defiance against whites would be severe. Enslaved women learned to be clever and cunning by using whatever opportunities presented themselves to resist slavery, primarily through the system, the very system that enslaved them. The ways that they challenged their enslavement on a day-to-day basis existed on a spectrum of severity in self-preserving ways that proved detrimental to the slave owners by reducing their abilities to make profit. For example, they used clumsy behaviors to hide acts of resistance like breaking tools and equipment or accidentally starting fires. They also would fake illness to avoid work. And some of them even practiced acts of self-mutilation to reduce their monetary value to their slavers. Now, don't get this mixed up because alongside men, women would also participate in more organized work slowdowns where they collectively agreed to work along with the men not to meet the demands of an overseer or a plantation owner. Working with slowness and performing carelessly to disguise their resistance as innocent mistakes gave the ancestors a sense of self-determination, autonomy, and independence. On the flip side of this really created the white slave owners' narrative about slaves being docile and clumsy and ignorant, and didn't realize that it was really all an act. But this role of resistance that our ancestors were engaging in actually was just reinforcing the slave owners' own racist and authoritarian ideals about people of African descent, while all the time they were being played, okay? But my favorite act of resistance was when enslaved women utilized their gender-specific roles to practice resistance. I remember many times saying, why couldn't they just poison some people and shit, you know? They were cooking for them and all this other stuff. But this did my heart some good because it said that women working in the plantation houses as cooks, especially senior mammy figures, possessed the ability to poison white families through the food that they cooked for them. I was like, yes, Because at one point, there were more slaves than slave holders. But the story that they tell us, slaves didn't try to rebel, but they did. And so the women that cooked the meals, they literally relied on the knowledge within the community about dangerous roots and plants to be able to carry out this act of resistance. So that's where root work comes from. And white folks scared shitless about that. That's why they demonize voodoo, but it's voodoo. And it was actually a religion that worked with Mother Aya, the plants and the universe to communicate and to flourish. So I think that this is important to know because the lives and experiences of enslaved women were diverse. They weren't passive beings. Their enslavement and its brutalities were not the sum total of our ancestors' existence. I'm quite sure they spent more time. They were manifesting through visions the days of freedom. And so how dare us in this space and time to say that we're tired or that we want to just give up because our ancestors never did. They still envisioned a life of freedom, and we are evidence of that. And so we owe them that. We cannot desecrate the sacrifice that they did to bring us to this point.
I swear you gotta stay.
We gotta stay focused.
They gon' say you can't, they gon' say you won't, but you gotta stay focused.
Okay, so let me get into what I want to discuss today. But let me just stop for a minute and say, I am new at this activism thing. And so this is, again, we need to get in where we supposed to fit in at. This is what I do. This is what is real for me. I'm not going to get out of here and hold not one picket sign or protest or anything like that. But I will. This is where I fit in at. And so I'm just going to say that until I get my sea legs, I may read some stuff. A lot of people say, well, I like to hear people just be real and just be themselves. Yeah, well, okay, I'm a perfectionist first off. And that's problematic for me because I don't want to get on here and sound like a blazing idiot. I am just simply saying that I may be reading some things. All right, I own it. As I continue to grow and do my self-work, to get off the sideline and get back into the game like I'm supposed to, then yeah, I'm going to do some stuff that might be wrong or and mispronounce some stuff. I'm a speaker. I tell people all the time I make up words, shit. Just realize that I'm growing in this. I told you last time that just the revolution or the revelation and evolution of my podcast from different names to when I finally come to giving myself permission. I had originally wanted to relaunch the podcast by using the title Quiet Riot. And I told you last time that it actually came from the speech of then Senator Barack Obama that he gave in 2007. So instead of me saying it, I'm going to let you hear what he said in regards to the Quiet Riot.
These quiet riots that take place every day, they happen when a sense of disconnect settles in and hope dissipates.
Then Senator Obama was actually saying is that there is a frustration looming and boiling within the African American consciousness. For me, Black Lives Matter was a unspoken reassertion of this quiet riot brewing within the African American community. But sadly, the political rhetoric smothered the more significant message out. And they demonized it. Everybody became deaf to it because it was just the overwhelming rhetoric. But I believe that outward riots, I'm just simply saying this, for me, outward riots and protests don't really faze white society anymore. I think that they know that our explosive frustrations are primarily contained in our neighborhoods. And we just merely destroy our own communities, which becomes a sense of self-sabotage. Now, I know people will say, well, we're not destroying our stuff because we don't own shit. Well, that's the thing. When we're destroying shit, do we have any plan to rebuild where we are owning it? We don't have the business loans to rebuild in our community. And then the question would be, Would we even, as the Black community, support that establishment that is Black owned? Because we have trust problems with ourselves, not only within our own inner voice and intrinsic knowledge that we have. We don't trust the people that are just like us in business. Again, world according to Penny in the Black Lives Matter movement. I believe that what they were really saying was, we want to feel a sense of safety. And we want to have this so we're not feeling the threat of death or terror for the rest of our lives from white society. We want to have rest. And we just that just went over our heads. We're so busy caught up in the fight and being angry about what's happening that we don't give ourselves a sense of rest so that we can come back and strategize in a way that is beneficial for us. But I'm advocating for a new kind of revolution, a revolution that calls for healing, not just from external oppression, racial discrimination, and the inequities that we are bombarded with on a daily basis, but from the internal scars left by intergenerational trauma that is historical. We have to deal with that. And this podcast is an invitation to join a movement prioritizing Black inner wellness as essential, revolutionary, and well overdue, damn it. And we cannot continue to expect someone else to come to our rescue. They'd already proved they don't give a shit. It can't be done by external forces. This is what Gil Scott-Heron was saying, reminding us of, or giving us, I guess, a prophecy when he said the revolution will not be televised. And I know Kendrick Lamar did a fabulous job on Super Bowl night of saying the revolution is being televised. But let me say something about that whole performance. Well, before I do that, I want you to hear Gil Scott-Heron's remarks because there's a lot of people on social media that give the meaning of that song a different meaning than what I got from it. And then I came across a video where he was explaining what was behind that the revolution will not be televised. So listen to this so he can tell you in his own words.
What that was all about, the revolution will not be televised. That was about the fact that the first change that takes place is in your mind. You have to change your mind before you change the way you live and the way you move. So when we said that the revolution will not be televised, we were saying that, like, the thing that's going to change people is something that no one will ever be able to capture on film.
Absolutely. Change must happen in your mind before anything outside of you can change. An example of that was watching Kendrick Lamar at the Super Bowl. All them Black folks, all those Black bodies working together with one mind. Every one of them had to have a sense of internal consciousness, a collective consciousness that allowed them to get out there and do the damn thing, fit in where they were supposed to fit in at the appropriate time. I loved it. That is an example in art form, but we need to be doing this every day in our own lives. So again, the revolution that I am speaking of, this quiet riot, is not about some clandestine strategy trying to force white America to finally do right by us. Screw them. Our new protest should be rest with purpose. Yes, I know the 92%ers are out there. And as I said earlier, we sitting on the high-rise building and we sipping on Hennessy, watching the shit burn around us. In this moment, it's time for us to heal so we can hear and see without the filter of our trauma. We can then strategize on building a new model for African Americans that makes that old narrative bullshit obsolete. We have the ability to do that. I'm asking you, what quiet riot is brewing within you? What pain has silenced and repressed your purpose? And let me just say this. My true motivation in all of this journey, it's really just deeply personal. I got a chip on my shoulder, especially with this bullshit felon back in the office. My mother passed away from COVID, and his bullshit ass was what caused that thing to go awry. It ravished the Black community. She left me and my 4 sisters an envelope to open after her funeral, not on her death, but after her funeral. Now, I'm still trying to process, why did she want us to wait until then? I don't know, maybe because of the depth of the poem. And it rattled me to my core. It did. And maybe that was the reason why she wanted it to us to wait to read it after the funeral itself. But in her words, I'm not going to read it, but in her own words, she poured out the weight of being a single Black mother during Jim Crow and always being expected to be resilient despite her raw inner wounds. I got no problem with being resilient, and people, we walk around bragging about our resilience. I get it. But at one point in time, we need rest. And her poem was to finally speak her truth, something she never felt safe enough to say out loud. It was also somewhat of a prayer for her 5 daughters to have something that she never had living through the Jim Crow era. Someone who could hold space for her while she ministered to her wounds, her fears, her weariness. Someone who could let her know that it was okay not to be okay on that damn day that shit went awry and she felt overwhelmed as a Black woman with 5 children. No viable job and having to really rely on government assistance. And I remember the caseworkers coming to our house. And the shame, the sense of dignity that they ripped away from my mother, who was a proud Black woman. She wrote about the silent pain she carried, the scars she masked, and how the world just ignored her and expected her to just get over it. Every line had a backstory. My 4 sisters and I, we never knew on none of this. And now we will never know it because she's gone. And so we have to sit here and fill in the blanks. We had so many questions after reading. It was 2 pages long and we had so many questions. But we also gained clarity, and so many revelations came rushing through, at least for me. Her pretense was her only armor. But when that armor cracked, who was there to hold her up? This was a realization that just shattered me. But also it really inspired me. And that's why I mean that the universe just, kicked me square in my ass and said, okay, it's time to get out here and do what you have been called to do. Your spiritual agreement is coming up and you're going to have to get in where you fit in. Her confession just made me realize the depth of what so many of us endure. The voiceless cries for help. The wounds we've normalized, the healing delayed and denied, the ignored assertion that Black life is valuable and that our psychological well-being does matter. This is what my mother was trying to convey to us in her own way. But never, her nor my grandmother would never speak of the shit that they went through as Black women during that time. This was the anguish of my mother, my grandmother, the ancestors in a country that didn't give a damn about their psychological well-being. The social indignation that taught us to minimize and devalue our inner wellness. Here's what I've seen and continue to see in the African American community. Now, some people might get mad about it or whatever, but this is what I'm seeing, and especially now, while we're still on videos, doing dance routines and shit like that, the shit is on fire, and we're not prepared. Rather than deal with the inner anxiety of our disempowerment, our hopelessness, we gain self-agency by overcompensating with outer aesthetics, like makeup and weaves and nails and implants and attention-grabbing behavior. All of it just false symbols of self-value. But yet we say Black life matters. Somebody always says that you got to start loving yourself more than we've been taught to despise ourselves. I remember when we were growing up, my mother used to always say to us, you got to teach people how to treat you. But then I realized, in looking back, how can you teach anybody how to treat you when you don't know how to treat yourself? When we have not been given the space to truly dig deep and love ourselves in a radical manner. I'm going to say this again. The new protest is to rest with purpose. We're living in a time when Black Lives Matter is on signs, t-shirts, painted down a whole damn street. But here's the deal. The assertion must first radiate from within us. That reality, that realization is the power we hold to choose self-agency over just scratching and surviving, to flourish over simply existing. The work I'm committed to, prioritizing inner wellness in the African American community and the vision of the Learning Spa, is to honor my mother and my grandmother's silent pain. It's to change the legacy narrative of dreams denied. It's for you. It's for every wounded warrior and late bloomer in the African American community who feels like your time to flourish and to breathe has passed. But I'm here to tell you it hasn't. This podcast, this journey is about exploring what it means to fight, not with the external realities, but to confront the lies that we hold within that diminish our worth and keep us on the sideline, afraid to give our sacred expressive life force permission to be seen, heard, and felt authentically. I want to read the poem that my niece Erica wrote for my mom and her aunts to be read at her funeral. But I want to read it from the point of the enslaved women speaking through the generations to us as women now, as African American women who are faced with some insurmountable challenges right now. The name of the poem is We Are Our Mother's Garden. We are messy, organized women. We are hard, soft women. We are rolling laughter and sharp of tongue women. We are wind and fire and water women. We flow and we are set in our ways kind of women. We are you. You gave us the gift of fire, and we took the flame to burn away the old. We are the flood waters that gathered the mud and slows the flood. We love hard because of you. We pray faithfully and without ceasing because of you. We persist because we watched you do it. And we made it better. And our children enhanced it. And their children will make it even more extraordinary. We are the perennial jewels you birthed, grew, and treated as a harvest. And we will tend to the gardens you planted within us. We are growing our garden because of you. We bear the thorns, even while admiring the beauty of the roses we have become. You fertilized these sharp-bodied flowers. We bloomed, and we grew, and we continue to grow. In the fire of our faith, in the root of our purpose, on earth as it is in love, we are healing because of you. Ashe. The ancestors are speaking to us through generations. Through the generations, they are speaking with us. So, and let's not forget the beauty of who we are, the rhythm of our history, the poetry of our resilience, and the creativity that pulses through our veins. We've been more than survivors. We've been creators, builders, dreamers, and healers. No matter how far we look back, our hands have been healers. Think of the music, the art, and the literature that has emerged from our pain and joy. That's the kind of quiet riot I'm talking about, not the revolution that denies the history of our struggle, but the one that alchemizes it into something magnificent. This podcast will celebrate the revolution. We'll honor our ancestors, embracing the sacred life force they passed down to us. We'll reclaim our stories, not as tales of brokenness, but as testaments to our tenacity, our perseverance, and our strength of our most valuable and vulnerable moments. I remember one time just stressing over how vulnerable I felt. And my divine ally said, your vulnerability is your strength. And your strength and your vulnerabilities are your virtues. So as I close this episode, I want to challenge you to find a quiet moment this week. Set with your quiet riot. Own it. And give your sacred expressive life force permission to reveal your form of sacred activism. Remember, sacred activism doesn't separate the pursuit of inner peace from the quest of social justice. It understands that one cannot exist without the other. So whatever you come up with, like I said, own that quiet ride within you and write it down, speak it out loud, or just sit with it. Because the revolution begins there within you. This Women's History Month, focus on mapping out your revolution. Like our ancestors, learn to be clever and cunning by using whatever opportunities present themselves to resist in that moment. As African Americans, we carry the lantern of history, the traumas of stolen lives, broken promises, and imposed inferiority. But here's the thing, we also hold something more powerful within us, a sacred expressive life force that has endured, adapted, and thrived against all odds. So over the next few years, like I said, there was 3 things that I want us to focus in on. We are going to have to stay focused on the assignment. Number 1, rest with purpose. Heal so that we can hear and see without the filters of our trauma. 2, build a new model. Change happens by relinquishing the existing reality to build a new model that makes the existing bullshit narrative obsolete. Collective sustainment. We are not our own. We are the collective energy of those who came before us and those waiting in the future, whispering through the void. I cannot emphasize this enough. We are the sacred expressive life force of the ancestors and a long legacy of wounded warriors who broke their mental chains and freed their voices to bring healing, freedom, and light to the world around them. And now it's our turn. I appreciate you sharing this space with me. I hope you will keep listening and join me in creating our own expressions of sacred activism. If this episode resonated with you, leave me a comment. Better yet, subscribe to the podcast and tell a friend about it. In our next episode, we're going to dive deeper into what I mean by rest with purpose, so that we can give our sacred expressive life force permission to be seen, heard, and felt authentically. And we can only do that by healing the ouch within us. Oh, also, in a couple of months, I will be releasing the revised version of my book, Giving Myself Permission, Putting Fear and Doubt in Their Place. You can also follow me on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and on YouTube. Also, visit my website, pennymurray.com. Click on the Learning Spa tab to learn about my vision of prioritizing inner wellness in the African American community and donate to our building fund. We really need it, and we appreciate you for that in advance. All right? Okay, so until next time, take the time to reflect, to breathe, and to reclaim your sacred expressive life force, because the revolution begins inside you. And as always, remember, you are never the victim of life. You have always been the student of purpose. So what skills or higher consciousness are you learning? What task or message are you being prepared for? Ashe.